What is up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Today we got a good one. We're going to take a look at this year's 2022-2023 season. And specifically today, we got a good one. We're doing the Atlantic Division. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. As I said, this is sponsored by North Six Sports. Please give us a follow on our TikTok and our socials, Instagram, Facebook, everything. You can find us there at North Six Sports. Definitely be helpful to give us a follow. We got some great content coming out all the time. So let's take a look at some of these numbers and give me my opinion on what's going to happen in this year's Atlantic Division. So as you can see here, obviously, first things first, Florida, Toronto, Tampa, Boston, they kind of swept the board. When you look at the difference between Boston at 107 and Buffalo at 75 in terms of points, that's a big gap. That's a big difference that the fifth place team would have to theoretically make up in order for them to get to the next jump. So let me explain to you what I think is going to happen this year and give you a couple reasons why, starting with the Florida Panthers. They were first in the Atlantic Division last year, 58, 18, 6, 122 points. That led the league in points. They earned the President's Trophy. Unfortunately for the Panthers, they lost in the second round to a tough Tampa Bay team 4-0. They got swept. As you can see here, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit further in depth here, they finished fifth in the power play at 24.4%. So about a quarter of the time, they're scoring goals on the power play. 16th on the penalty kill at 79.5%, which actually averages out to 10.5. Now, the reason that I think that's important, it's kind of your median on where the team might end up, where the team should be. So I think if anything, I'm going to explain to you a little bit of where I think they might end up. I can see that power play staying really high, to be honest with you. And the penalty kill, I think, is going to increase as well. As you can see here, they did not have a first rounder in this year's entry draft. That was due to the Sam Reinhart trade with Buffalo. Obviously, it panned out pretty well. Reinhart scoring 82 points in 78 games this season. So I'm sure both teams are happy with that. Looking forward here, as you can see the lineup for the Florida Panthers, Verhaeghe, Barkov, and as of right now, Balcers. Obviously, Matthew Tkachuk coming over in the trade with Jonathan Huberdeau, which shakes things up big time in Florida, along with Sam Bennett, Colin White. Anthony Duclair wouldn't generally be on this third line, but I'm sure they can work it out. Cousins, Lundell, Reinhart, they got a lot of depth to work with. And obviously, Bobrovsky and Knight in the back end. I think that's something that's really important for the most part. As you can see, I mean, improving their penalty kill by just 1% is actually going to get them into the top 10 this year for PK. And I think that will happen. Uyghur's a big loss. Don't get me wrong. It's an absolutely massive loss. They still do have Aaron Ekblad there, who is a bona fide number one D-man, who's a workhorse and can handle the minutes. I do understand there's a little bit of a history of injury, but I don't think that's going to be a massive loss, losing Uyghur alone, because Kachuk is a big gain at both ends of the ice. I know Huberdeau put up a career high on 100 and I believe 15 points last season. Not many are led to believe that he's not going to put up the same production in Calgary, but I do also believe Matthew Tkachuk can actually outscore himself, his career high, pardon me, with this Florida team as he did with Calgary, just knowing that there's so much more depth and offensive talent and an offensive push with the Florida Panthers. As I said, Bobrovsky and Knight are going to be a top 5 duo, I think, this season. I think they're going to live up to, well, of course, the Bobrovsky 10 mil, but now with Spencer Knight signing that $4 million contract extension that starts next season, I think they're going to really show the league what they're all about. And last but not least, Mr. Paul Maurice. He's back behind the bench. Obviously, a stint with the Jets didn't go so well toward the end of that. He ended up walking away. There was a lot going on in that dressing room right now. And I can't blame Paul Maurice for walking away and needing a different change of scenery there. He's going to do absolutely phenomenal in down south in Florida. And I think they're going to be very competitive with him there. A player to watch for the Florida Panthers this year, Anton Lundell. He was 12th overall in the 2020 draft. He actually had a tremendous season last year. Very underrated player. 18 goals and 26 assists, 44 points total in just 65 games played there. So tons of potential and obviously a lot of offensive ceiling, if you will, or floor. Pardon me, offensive floor, playing with the likes of that top 6 if he can get into that, or even maybe find some power play minutes on the second unit there. Moving into your Toronto Maple Leafs, they finished second in the Atlantic Division, 54-21-7 for 115 points. They actually had a tremendous regular season, considering there was a bit of ups and downs in the back end with Jack Campbell. The very unfortunate thing, as many Leaf fans know, come and known over the years, they lost in the first round. Tampa Bay was a tremendous opponent, super tough. They went to 7. It really could have went either way. That's how tight the games were. But unfortunately, there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. And unfortunately, Toronto was on the losing end again. They did actually finish. Obviously, they're super strong. There's no doubt about it. There's 60 goal scorer in Matthews. There's a couple 100-point guys capable of 100 points in Nylander and potentially Tavares. They may not get there, but they have that talent. They can get that to the puck in the net a little bit more consistent. All around, what I'm trying to say is they got a dynamic offensive group that can score. Can they defend? Obviously, they haven't been able to do so in the last couple of years to even get through the first round. Last year, they finished the first power play 27.3%, which is absolutely dynamic. Excuse me. I don't expect them to finish maybe that high, but if they can hover around that 25-26%, I think they're going to score just as many goals and just be effective as is. 27 is a high number to aim for, but again, with a guy like Big Poppy shooting the puck and scoring 60 in a year, that makes your power play awfully dynamic, and it adds a completely different element knowing that there's probably a lot of emphasis placed on that guy if he has the puck on his stick. And then 8th in penalty kill at 82%. That's a very reasonable number. Anything above 80% is generally pretty solid. You should find your way into about the top 10, looking at that number there. And again, that averages out to about 4.5. So even if the Leafs drop to 4 or 5 in the peak power play and don't finish in that 27 plus range, and still manage and find a way to keep the puck out of their net, I think they're going to be solid again. I really do expect this team to be strong this year. They, of course, did not have a first-round pick in this 2022 draft. That was part of moving Mrazek's contract out. Thank you very much, Chicago, for helping out the Leafs with that one. Taking a look at the lineup here. Michael Bunting, Matthews, Marner, they were dominant last year. Nylander, Tavares, when he comes back, he's got 3 weeks or so to start the season. He should miss 5 or 6 games, unfortunately, maybe a little bit more for when he gets back. But overall, strong depth. I really like the signing of Calle Jarnkrok. I think that's somebody that could really make a big difference. Zach Aston-Reese adds a little bit of toughness, and Obey Kubel adds a little bit more speed. Can they get the works out of can they get the most out of the likes of Nick Robertson? We'll see. That back end is really struggling right now with injuries. Losing a little bit of speed with Giordano and Muzzin, but of course they're veterans, they're leaders. They're going to make an absolute impact there. Of course, the biggest question comes down to Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov. Can they keep the puck out of the net? Are they better or worse with these guys in the lineup, right? And that's the toughest thing because you can't predict that without seeing it. Are they going to split duties? Are they going to do 60-40? Are they going to be, more? Well, we don't know until we find out. As I said, so who's at number 1? That's going to be a massive question mark going in. You could see a regression, like I said, on that PK, which if you're not scoring as many goals on the power play, maybe you're not producing as much on at even strength, and then all of a sudden your PK goes down too. It's not a good recipe for success, right? You got to learn to balance it out a little bit, or you'll have to balance it out, pardon me. But I do think, obviously, with the team that they've got, there's so much potential. And like I said, tons of speed in the bottom 6. That was my last point that I wanted to say. As I pointed out with a couple of those guys, they have always, and when they get Engvall back, of course, they lost Mikheyev this year to Vancouver, who is a big loss on their penalty kill, and just, that speed on the back end, or the bottom 6, excuse me, that makes such a big difference in the NHL these days. As I pointed out, player to watch, Calle Jarnkrok. Guy's entering his 10th season, very underrated. Scored 106 goals, 135 assists, which amounts to 241 points in 574 games. He's been around the league a little bit, obviously having most of his success come from Nashville. I think this guy's going to fit in just well, and I would not be shocked if he finds a way into the top 6 this season. Your Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, of course, they've gone to back-to-back, or 3 cups in a row, excuse me. They finished 3rd in the Atlantic Division last season with 110 points, which is to be expected. Obviously, they dealt with injuries, right? I know for the most part, they didn't have a lot of their top end guys going into whether it was a regular season or with the playoffs, excuse me, too, which I'm going to touch base a little bit on that shortly. They lost in the Stanley Cup final to Colorado, as we all know. 4-2 was a tremendous series, great hockey. I think both of those teams deserve to be there. Obviously, Colorado was just a workhorse team, and they were just dominant from start to finish. Sticking with Tampa, though, 8th on the power play. You got to expect with a healthy Kucherov, a healthy point, Steven Stamkos coming into his own in terms of being able to shoot the puck and pass with the best of them, which you wouldn't have expected when he was scoring 60 goals early in his career, to be such a dynamic playmaker. And not to mention just how much of a leader that Stammer is. He's such a difference maker on and off the ice that I can't imagine a team as good as Tampa Bay underperforming. And then 11th on the PK. When you got a guy like Vasilevsky in net, your PK is always going to be strong. He's absolutely the best player or best goaltender in the league, in my opinion. And I think anytime that guy's between the pipes, the other team is questioning where they're shooting, what they're doing. Everything is evolved around that, and it's such a difference maker to have a winning goaltender. And then too, so drafted Isaac Howard 31st in the NHL draft. We will see how that guy pans out here. It's tough to make a lineup like this. Much similar to the Leafs, it's just the top six is stacked. You saw the likes of Taylor Radish and Boris Kachuk already get traded off last season to, I believe, Chicago as part of the Hagel deal. So you kind of see that if you're not, jumping right into the top six, you're not likely making the team here, because the bottom depth players, as you can see here, are filled with a lot of vets. You're bringing in obviously Nick Paul last season, Patty Maroon, Edward Belmar, and Corey Perry are just unique skill sets and just veteran leaders. As I keep touching on, you'll notice some of the biggest consistencies that you'll find with these winning teams, especially, is that veteran leadership. And that's what you got a lot here. Big acquisition of Nemestikov, bringing him back is for his second stint with the Bolts. Obviously, when, like I touched base on, when you have their pillars of success, Stamkos / Point / Kucherov, whoever you want to call your main guy at the up front, you got Hedman on D and Vasilevsky in net, right? Art Ross, potential winning trophy winners there in the front. You got your Norris candidate every year, Victor Hedman, and your Vezina candidate every year, Andrei Vasilevsky. It is extremely tough to put the puck past him and get the puck past them, if you will, as a whole. So again, quick recap on the Bolts. Healthy Nikita Kucherov and a healthy Braden Point. Those are two absolute stars in this league, dynamic at both ends of the ice. That is a win-win for the Bolts, no matter which way you flip it. They've played 71 games in the playoffs alone in the last 3 seasons, almost a full extra season of hockey under their belt of experience, of playoff grind and grit and success, right? 2 out of 3, obviously almost won 3 in a row. It's stuff that you just don't see very often, and it's not likely going to happen for anytime soon. Potentially, you would think, but I guess we'll have to see, right? McDonough's a huge loss. Can Sergachev fill that void? Obviously, you lose another Norris candidate, arguably in McDonough going over to Nashville. Sergachev's handled that role extremely well in terms of being able to play penalty kill and play a little bit of power play minutes as well. He's great with the puck. He's aggressive. I think he's going to be able to fill that role a little bit there. You might have a little bit of a hump or a bump to start the season and kind of getting hit, Cooper's lines sorted out, so to speak. But their depth as a whole is just tremendous. And like I touched on there, I don't think you're going to have any issues running with Patty Maroon and Corey Perry, Belmar, those guys there. Nemestikov coming back is a lot of skill in your third line playing with Colton there, right? So it's not a loss. I can expect that Tampa Bay is going to have another strong season this year without doubt. Touch base on him a couple times. Player to watch, Vladislav Nemestikov. He's entering his 10th season, so he's not young anymore, right? One of the big reasons when they got rid of him there, I believe, I'm not in the dressing room, that he was a little bit, immature at the time and maybe not ready for the role. It wasn't ready for a top 6 role. Of course, he's playing with the likes of the such skill there, so he's really kind of been able to develop his game in other areas there. and now he's ready for a second stint back, and I think he's going to absolutely flourish this time around, truthfully. Nemeskov has 107 goals, 129 assists, 241 points in 553 games. Extremely respectable. Guy's had a tremendous career, very under the radar, but I think that he's going to come back and just kind of fit in right where he left off, hopefully, when he was at one point scoring a lot of points and being productive for the Bolts. Over to your big bad Bruins, fourth in the Atlantic last year, 107 points overall. They lost in the first round, unfortunately, in a very, very tough first round series against Carolina. What a go. They lost 4-3, obviously, game seven. That's a tough one alone. They had a very, very weird offseason. Very weird offseason. I'll touch base in a second. 15th in the power play at 21.2%. So you'd like to see that go up a bit with the talent that they have there, considering they have a potential 50 goal scorer in Pasternak. They got the likes of Marchand and or Bergeron working there too. And then obviously McAvoy in the back end that makes such a big difference. They have so much talent. I would like to think that number is going to go up, up, up. That PK, like I said, with the injuries early on in the season here, I'm going to touch base there. It's going to be tough for the first little month. A lot is really relying and falling on the likes of Swayman and Allmark to be that goaltending duo that they were last year and that they can be, because I really do think that they also too could finish in top 10 in goaltending this season as well. Of course, they didn't have a first round pick this year. That pick was part of the Lindholm trade with Anaheim. So they did not have a first rounder there. So it's going to be tough to kind of figure out what their future is all about in Boston. But again, with the likes of the lineup that you have on that team, it's extremely tough to discount what they have, right? Taylor Hall and David Krejci. Obviously, Krejci's came back from the Czech League this year. Taylor Hall flourished with him. I think he had 14 points in 16 games when Krejci was out with him in the lineup when he came over from the Devils, I believe, or the Coyotes, one or the other, regardless of which. He's played for a lot of teams now. But like I said, that second line, even too, Zach Bergeron or whenever Marchand comes back, and then obviously you got Jake DeBrusk, who's a key piece I think this season. Lindholm's gonna have to hold his own. Carlo, I believe, is gonna be able to step up and just do tremendous with that second line role or first line role, if you will, until McAvoy comes back. Like I said here, Marchand, McAvoy, Grzelcyk out until approximately December. We're seeing guys come back a little bit earlier. If they are in trouble, will you see these guys come back a little bit earlier just to kind of play through even more injury to get there? Big thing to point out with Boston, they got 9 UFAs on the roster with an average age of 31. Take that with you will, what you will, how you will. I can't sit here and say these guys are too old. 31, 32, 33 is not that old by any means. Most of these guys have played 10 plus years, in the NHL. But you got to look at it and simply say, hey, like, this is a veteran locker room. You cannot discount anybody in this particular dressing room here. I think the Bruins are forever going to be a team to struggle against, so to speak, just because of how hard they work and how much they care about every puck battle, winning every game, doing the little things, right? The veteran leadership and the presence in the room of your Bergeron's. Unfortunately, Chara's no longer there, but now Marchand's one of the key pieces. Pasternak's one of those key leadership pieces that you have in the room. McAvoy, Grzelcyk, they've all been around a while now, and they've learned from the best. And I think that rubs off on everybody. And you just want to be better. You want to absorb everything. You want to train harder. You want to watch film more and be more engaged in everyday piece of the pie, right? And it's one of those things where you can never underestimate it by any means. And I also think too that Pavel Zacha, very, very underrated pickup this season. I think he's going to have a good year. I think he should set a career high in points. He's only got a career high of 36 points. I believe that came with the Devils. And when you look at who he was playing with there, not to discredit who he was playing with, but I think he's got a massive, massive upgrade coming over to the top 6 in the Bruins, especially when Marchand comes back, because maybe he finds himself on power play and gets a couple extra minutes out there, snapping the puck around with those guys and passing it over to Pastrnak. I think is a win-win, and I think this guy's going to have a very, very good season to say the very least. My key piece, though, my player to watch is Jake DeBrusk. Now, this guy's entering his 6th season. Obviously, he had the trade request, trade swirls, rumors of last season. He wanted to obviously be a guy that's going to produce in this league, and I think he thinks very highly of himself, and that's a great thing to have in any dressing room. And obviously, the guys in that dressing room recognize that too, because I don't think many guys really wanted him to leave. And I think, too, now that you see Marchand out and a couple of the other guys have kind of shifted, went different locations, or you're playing somewhere else, whatever, I think it opens the door, really does, for a lot of these guys, for your DeBrus, for your, Zakas of the world that are going to come in and kind of handle those new responsibilities. As you can see, the 92 goals, 84 assists, 176 points in 321 games. I'm going to expect this guy to be a 60 to 70 point guy. I really am. I think he's got the talent alone just to be better and kind of produce more and produce on his own. Obviously when you get thrown into different positions here and circumstances, if you will, I think that he's really going to handle himself just fine. I really don't see any reason why Jake DeBrusk can't be a star in their top 6 this season. Moving on to your Buffalo Sabres. Now, they were 5th in the Atlantic, as I pointed out, quite a gap between 4th and 5th. They finished with 75 points. They missed the playoffs. As a whole, it was a good season, I think, actually, all around. I really can't say that Buffalo, if you ask the team or the management alone, that they had a really bad season. I think they had a lot of good progression with some of their young kids. Obviously, Delene's coming in. They have Power coming into the lineup now. Dylan Cousins is really starting to make his way up into the lineup. But obviously, too, with Alex Tuch and Tage Thompson, 2 key trades that they've made over the last couple seasons that have just been an absolute dynamic shift for them. That's made a huge, huge, upgrade alone for that team. They drafted Matthew Savoie, 9th overall. Noah Ostlund, 16th overall, which came from the Vegas trade with Jack Eichel, and Yuri Kulich, 28th from Florida. And that was part of I believe the Reinhart trade, as I mentioned earlier, from Florida's behalf. That was the Reinhart trade there. So it's worked with, really well for both players. Jeff Skinner, obviously up there making a lot of money, but he's been a consistent 30 goal scorer. And if it's not 30, it's usually 20, 25 at minimum. As I touched on, Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch, and, leading the way, so to speak, coming over there from the St. Louis deal with Ryan O'Reilly, respectively, and Alex Tuch, obviously a key piece that came back with the Eichel deal, as well as Peyton Krebs, as you can see there. Middlestat and Cousins, they're kind of on prove it deals right now, or prove it, roles, if you will. And I think that they're going to really step up and have a massive increase to the production there. JJ Paterka played Germany hockey, World 19s or under 19s, World Juniors for. Let me spit that one out. He was a key piece alongside Timmy Stutzla. So a lot of good potential there. I talked about Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin, and obviously Yoki Haru's there. Leaf fans would be very familiar with Lyubushkin coming over there and what from filling that role. But as a whole, I don't necessarily think that they're going to be a playoff team this year. They're personally a sleeper of mine to be in a top 10 power play. I think that they have the dynamic forward group that's going to be able to really fine tune a few details and get different looks with their left-handed and right-handed shots that they do have, effective from both sides with Skinner and or Tage Thompson and Tuch righties, right? And as a whole, I think that's a massive upgrade if they can really, as you can see, I think I had them in the top 10 if they were 2.3% higher. It's a bit of a reach, but I really do think that you're going to see a couple players take the next step forward. this particular season. And one other player I really think could take that next step forward and take the reins in the crease is goaltender Ukko Pekka or Lukkinen. I think he's got a lot of potential. Just watching him play a few games last year, he was very strong, excuse me, very sound. His rebound control needed a little bit of work in terms of where he was placing it. And also, too, when he was kind of coming from the highs to the lows, I think he could be a little more upright, a little more square with his shoulders just to cover a little bit more of the net. Obviously, I'm no goaltending professional, but I do think that he's going to really, stand out next season and be a big difference maker for that team. My player to watch, Dylan Cousins. He's entering his third season as a high draft pick, a first rounder, 17 goals and 34 assists for 51 points total in his 120 career games. I think he hits 50 plus points this season alone. I think he doubles his point total, career total in just this season alone. I think he's playing with a lot more confidence this season. I really do think he's a lot more comfortable with the players he's playing with now that he understands the system and his role. I think that he's really going to flourish in a new, cycle of Buffalo Sabres hockey, if you will, or a new regime, if you will. And I think it's going to be a key thing. Moving into the Red Wings, 6th in the Atlantic Division, 32, 40, and 10. They had a tough season, only 74 points, obviously missing playoffs. They had a very, very poor special team. So much like the Sabres, I think that the Red Wings are also, too, going to be a drastically different hockey team when it comes to power play and penalty kill and just all around hockey as a whole. 26 on the power play, only 16.3%. Never enough to do it in the NHL. And then obviously dead last in penalty kill, 70, just under 74%. You're getting scored on once every 4 times you take a penalty. That's roughly once a game just alone in penalty kills and special team goals against, excuse me, and that's not good enough. They did, however, have the 8th overall pick, drafting Marco Casper in this year's draft. So moving into and looking at the lineup this season, big addition coming back off of shoulder surgery last year. Jakub Vrana, I think, is going to really turn some heads and just be a difference maker this year. Obviously, you got your likes of Larkin with the captaincy role, Tyler Bertuzzi, Lucas Raymond, and Sider are guys that we've known and talked about last season as potential rookie of the years who arguably should take a very good step forward again. It would be tough to believe that Sider can get that much better going into his second season, but I truthfully think he's going to one day be a top 10 D man in the league. And the biggest pieces that I figured that are going to make a massive, overall improvement to the Detroit Red Wings are just the quality of players they were able to sign this season. David Perron, Andrew Kopp, Oli Mata, Ben Sherratt. I mean, other than Kopp, maybe Kopp and Sherratt, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I know Perron and Mata have both won cups, right? So they've been key pieces to the cups as well, which is the veteran leadership coming out, right? You add guys like that, and all of a sudden you're structurally sound. Pieces fall into place. This guy moves into that slot. This guy moves back a spot. This guy can jump up because he's ready to go there, right? Whoever, whatever. They're structured in all the areas. I talked about Tampa Bay with having the pillars. You now have Sider in your decor, Raymond, if you will, if you want to use him as your kind of main forward to work around up top. And then Huso and Nedeljkovic can kind of split the tandem. They're no Vasilevsky, but I think truthfully, Huso and Nedeljkovic can be strong goaltender duo, much similar to what you saw with Swayman and Allmark last year with the Bruins. I think you can see a very strong tandem ahead with both of these guys here. And I just think as a whole, they should really challenge for a wild card position. I think taking a drastic step forward is not out of the realm. And I really do think that they could be capable of it. And a big guy toward that is going to be, as I touched on, Jakub Vrana. The guy's entering his 7th season. He is coming back from a shoulder surgery, unfortunately, but was tearing it up before he got injured as a whole. So I think that he should be able to keep that production at least consistent moving forward. He's got 97 goals, 90 assists, 187 what's up Sid points in 321 games. Extremely respectable player. I really like this guy, and I think he's going to make a good difference going into this particular season with the Red Wings. Moving on to your Ottawa Senators. So, they had a tough season last year. Not a lot was really looking as bright as it is this year, to say the very least. Seventh in the Atlantic, just 73 points. Of course, they too missed the playoffs. Very abysmal power play for the position that they finished, being at 20th overall, 19.3%, and they finished 13th in penalty kill. Very respectable, right? So they played strong defense on special teams, if you will, but they definitely need a few pieces there, and they got those pieces. They didn't need that first round pick because they gave that up for Alex DeBrincat, a massive, massive increase. And as you can see here, a crazy shift and change of events in Sens land, bringing in the likes of Alex DeBrincat, Giroux, Tyler Mott, and Cam Talbot. Massive additions, not to mention their first rounder from 2 years ago, Jake Sanderson, is now going to play in the lineup, hopefully at least. So it's just an all around different look of a team. You have a strong top six now. It's a massive difference when you add essentially a full line of top six caliber hockey players to your team. So I can't say it again, but or any different. I think no team boosted their offense like the Sens did this year. Giroux, DeBrincat, and Mott alone, and then obviously toward the end of the season last year, they were able to get Matthew Joseph, who is an extremely underrated hockey player, and he's going to make that third, and or if he finds a way to jump to the top six, second line so much better. They only had one guy reach the 60-point plateau. I expect and I project that the Senators should have at least six players reach the 60-point plateau. Tkachuk, Norris, Giroux, DeBrincat, Batherson, and Stützle should all hit 60 points this year, in my opinion. I think that just speaks volumes of how much different that offense is going to look. And then hopefully, too, if they can keep that PK at that same level and play some solid hockey all around, I really think that Talbot is a more I should say better. I shouldn't say not maybe more experienced, but just a more reliable goaltender than Matt Murray is. So again, like I touched on, if that PK can move just 1% higher, they jump into the top 10 for PK across the board, and a lower goals against per game than 3.22. It's tough in the league when you're letting in over 3 goals a game to win the games. And I truthfully think that this Ottawa Senators team is going to be a massively different and more difficult team to play against in this strong Atlantic division. Player to watch this year, Josh Norris. Kid's entering his 4th season in the league. Extremely respectable numbers. He was hovering a point per game last year, and I really do expect him to be well over a point per game this year, playing arguably the top line with Tkachuk, and depending how they want to sub it out, maybe DeBrincat by the end of the year so he can grind it away and get the puck to him. I'm not sure how the top six is going to pan out, but they're much different to work with. And when you have 6 different guys who can hover, especially with the veteran and Claude Giroux, look out. You never really know if they catch fire, right? 52 and 38 for 90 career points and 125 career games. This kid is a stud. And I truthfully think one day he's going to be a 70 to 80 point guy, hands down, especially if he can play with the talent that he's with right now. Moving on to your Montreal Canadiens. It's tough to say. The team did not get any better. If anything, in my opinion, they may have gotten worse, unfortunately. 8th in the Atlantic last year with 55 points. They finished second last in the power play at just under 14%, which isn't going to cut it. 27th in PK at 75%, not cutting it. Obviously too, it's tough when you don't have the offensive flair. Cole Caulfield should be able to help that out there. Ryan Suzuki, just freshly named captain, is going to make a big difference this year on the offensive end. And then bringing in Kirby Dach, just kind of a project that you can say, hey, not a project, pardon me, I don't mean it in the sense of Kirby Dach was on a downfall, wasn't able to flourish in Chicago with the likes of Kane and Taves. So it's tough when you look at that, but I think this kid has a ton of potential, and I think Montreal getting him at the time they did in his career was an amazing move, and I really do think that he's going to be a stud one day with the Canadiens. And then too, obviously drafted Yuri Slavkovsky, pardon me, with the first overall pick. He hasn't looked too strong in the preseason, but give the kid time. I think he's going to be a stud. He's got the body and he's got the length and the speed as well to kind of be a capable hockey player in the NHL. And then too, from Calgary in the Tyler Toffoli trade, they were able to get Philippe Mézard with that 26th overall pick. So it's it's looking good. Signs are pointing up in Montreal. As you can see here, not the strongest lineup across the board, if you will. They do have a lot of offensive potential. They do have some young potential as well in the lineup. But as you can see in that defensive core is kind of where it struggles a little bit. Losing Jeff Petrie this year, obviously losing Shea Weber last year. And then too, of course, Carey Price announcing that he's likely not playing this season either. It's a crazy shakeup. The veteran leadership kind of goes out the window, unfortunately, and it's really tough to make up. You can't just make superstars come out of nowhere. When they leave your dressing room, it's very tough to make up from. So as a whole, I think the Habs are going to need a season or two to kind of get a few more key pieces sorted out. They need something in their goaltending that's going to help out there. But as you can see, like I touched on, Price, Weber, Romanov, Petrie, those are big players that impact not just the defensive end, but the special teams alone, PK and power play. So it's going to be really difficult this season, I think, for the Montreal Canadiens. I do have them as a lottery team again, unfortunately. I do, however, think Suzuki, Caulfield, and Doc should provide fantasy value. They should provide offense for this team. And can Marty St. Louis, keep that success going? We saw the success early on that he had with Cole Caulfield, giving him the instructions, teaching him things on the power play, the fake shot, step up, shoot. Like those things go a long way. And it's really cool as a fan to see, truthfully. It really is to see it work out. And you kind of look at the little smirk. Marty goes, yeah, like I still got it. Yeah, like I can still do it too. Right? And I like the guy. I really do. I think he's got the dressing room in good shape. I think he's a great coach, a great guy to be around, and obviously the team really likes him. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward with them. One player I don't know if many people still think of him as a star. Maybe he never was a star, but just as a whole, a guy that was so much potential coming into the league, a very high draft pick. Tampa Bay, unfortunately, or I shouldn't say unfortunately, I should Tampa Bay and the Habs made the trade with Sergachev for Drouin, and it just has not worked out for both sides. Sergachev has flourished, won 2 cups with the Bolts, obviously went to a third cup final, and Drouin has just never panned out the way that they had expected. He's entering his 9th season. He's had injuries, his shoulder, let me try that again. He's had injuries in the past that have kept him out. He had the mental health issues that he's dealt with. So very unfortunate for the player of such high caliber. 75 goals, 177 assists, 252 points in 427 games. Maybe not the numbers that you would have expected from such a high pick, but again, this is such a tough division, tough league to produce in, and I think the Montreal Canadiens are probably going to need at least one more year to kind of let that pan out and sort of see where they truthfully are with not just this player, but their whole team. And so let's take a look. As you can see, what's the main thing that you point out? This is the NHL's power play leaders of last season. As I touched on, you got your Leafs at 1, Florida at 5, Tampa Bay at 8, and Boston at 15. It's no shocker that these teams are, in the position that they are at the end of the year, to finish where they are. And truthfully, too, when you look at it and then you go to the PK, it's much similar, right? What is your consistencies? 8, 9, 11, and 16. So they're all in the top half of the league in terms of special team numbers. And those are extremely important to be able to compete today. You need to put the puck in the net on your power play, and you need to have reliable defense and goaltending. Obviously, too, your forwards need to play a extremely strong part with that, too. But I'm moving on. I do think this particular season, unfortunately for all you fans of these 4 teams, I think the Habs, the Senators, the Red Wings, and the Buffalo Sabres, unfortunately, will miss the playoffs, um, which leaves obviously 2 who will make the playoffs this year. I've got again the same 4 teams. I have Tampa Bay finishing in number 1 in the East, number 1 in the Atlantic, Toronto finishing number 2 in the East, number 2 in the Atlantic. I've got actually Florida finishing 5th in the East, which would be third in the Atlantic. And then I have Boston finishing seventh in the East, which would be grabbing the seventh wild card position, second wild card position. Excuse me, a wild card position, probably first or second, that I have in that division. So I will give you a little bit more detail as to who I think is going to, come up and take those positions in terms of first to eighth in both East and West, as I do have the other three divisions upcoming as well for my projections. That's going to end it today. I honestly just want to say thank you for watching. Again, please like and subscribe to N6 Sports, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We have at North 6 Sports, and TikTok as well at North 6 Sports. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Have a great day.